Good morning and welcome to my weaving studio. Here today I'm going to show you how to warp a loom. And if you can see right here, I always have a bag of beans. I always keep green painter's tape with me to mark out where my loom and my stands and other things will go. And I always keep with me tape measure, scissors, the peg, and so on. This is what you may need to get started. Okay. So unfortunately you're going to have to stare at my feet a little bit, but here's the tape measure that I showed you that I use. And one of the things that I figured out that works really well for me is I have my, don't need that right now, I have my little clothespin. I'm going to go ahead, and this is just to show you what you can do, is to take it, pinch it along here. And then this is a great way to figure out how long your piece is going to be. So if I need it to be longer, obviously I'm going to move this peg back as far as I need it to go, making sure that I leave at least a 20-inch allowance. Now I do at least 20 to 25 inch because I like to do macrame finish. But this is just a surefire way of getting what you want using a soft measuring tape. So go ahead and get the 120-inch one so you're not limited. And that way you can go and figure out how far away you want this to be. So I'm satisfied. We're just gonna toss this aside. And here's your yarn. I have a cotton yarn, which is a cotton linen actually. It has no give. I have a merino yarn. This has give. And what give means is it has elasticity. So when I move it, you can see that there's bounce. Right now we're not gonna worry about that. I'm gonna start with my cotton linen. And I always take it to the back side of my project. Now, because I'm going to be warping it this way, I'm going to start on this side and I'm going to tie it on. I'm going to tie it on because it's going to behave itself. And I'm just doing a basic knot. Really, it's not going to go anywhere. You're not going to be pulling this away. Give yourself some slack on the yarn because sometimes they get a little feisty. Not letting go. I always use the holes. So you have hole and slot. So when you're ready to start warping the loom, I like to go through here because it gives me stability when it's time to separate out the threads across. I always put it in the front. That's the nice thing about the Ashford SampleIT. Everything is built in, ready to go. I have my hook. I slide it through the hole and then I bring it around. Now I keep the taut side, so this is the side that's tied onto the bar, away from me. And I bring the looser side around. That's because it puts everything into alignment. Now here's the tricky part. You have a bar and it's gonna read as an under because it's gonna pull from there. In order to make this secure, you have to go back around the bar. So I'm going over the bar and I'm gonna find the next hole and I'm gonna put this through and I'm gonna grab it, okay? So now, again, this is the same question I get every time and it's okay, is now it's under the bar. So in order to get it back over, I'm just gonna wrap it around. I'm gonna hold on to it, grab it with my hook, pull it through, and you really do have to be able to use both hands. This is not, you don't have to be left hand strong if you're a right-handed person, but you really do need to be able to use both hands. And it doesn't matter if your hook's up or down, it's just a matter of comfort, and just pull that loop through. And that's pretty much how you get started. Okay, for the sake of this video, I went back and I undid the work I did because I just needed you to see what I was doing. That I'm pulling this, and I'm not afraid to show you that my lines are all going through the holes right now. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna tie on the next one because I wanna show you, and I just leave this slack because I'll snug that up another when I'm done tying this on and getting through this. Come on, hands. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and do 5 of these loops. And I want you to follow me on this because this is important. Of course, now it's gonna fight me. I need a little slack. And if you have a ball of yarn, just make sure you have a basket nearby that you can drop it in. Otherwise, it's going to just dance all over the place. Coming through here, I'm going to go around. Okay, and one more. So I simply, before I cut over here or do anything, I acknowledge that these need to be tied on. I'm going to excuse myself and go grab my scissors because that's the story of my life, is nothing's ever where I need it to be. I'm going to go ahead and just cut those. I'm holding on to them just for my own sanity. I will wrap this one around twice just because it makes me feel better. And then I just go ahead and I tie it on. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have some waste at this end. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to wrap it around, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull that, and there we go. So this is an important detail. I want you to look at this. When you pull this off, it's good to just leave your thumb through, but I want you to see the difference. So you see how one is a little bit more bouncy. This one is exactly how it's going to be, but this one actually has some stretch to it. So when you're warping a loom and you're planning for a Sayori project, or you're just doing something with cotton or with merino or something with that kind of give, you need to take that into allowance because you're going to probably lose maybe another like 4 inches off your project. So that's why I usually do when I'm using my merinos, for instance, I will go ahead and add on another 4 inches just for that bounce back factor. And all you're going to do is you're going to go back in, and it's that scary. Cut, and then until you're ready to start the next procedure, I just wrap it around my hand and I pull it through and I leave it there. Okay, if you are lucky, Ashford or your yarn shop will provide you with corrugated cardboard. This is superior to everything else that you're going to use. It gives you a great opportunity to get an even, balanced gauge, tension with your yarn, etc. So I keep this on hand, and we're not really winding a lot on, so I'm going to go back and just gently pull my little loop out. But you can see that this one, if I hold it real relaxed, that this one already has some loss on it, just from that bounce back. So you can imagine if you're working on a bigger project, how much that bounce back is going to be. So I may not have to use my corrugated cardboard on this because I made it so tiny, but I give it some tension, and I try really hard to just keep it as balanced as possible. I'm going to pull this forward. So when I get it to right there, if I'm doing this by myself, I'll go ahead and I just sort of wrap it around. Just enough. Make sure that that's locked because that would make you crazy. But just enough. It may pull on it. I may not have enough there. So I'm going to go ahead and be a little bit more bodacious and tie. There you go. Now you've seen how I would problem solve that. I'm going to come around. I'm going to do this. And once I have my hands in place, I tell people it is okay to keep your hands there. I'll go ahead and slack off. Holding this, I will bring it forward. Just enough that this paper is not going to pop off. Now, if it helps, you can also move your heddle back, and keeping your tension on there, you're just going to roll this forward. I find that this is the hardest part, is how to use your hands. But the truth of this is that you have to be able to use both of your hands. But if you can see how beautiful this is, it is just a nice, beautiful, balanced. And then the only reason this is apart is because of where it's tied off. That may move a little bit. Pull it forward until it's about there. So see, I have enough room to tie on. And that's what we're going to do next. So I feel satisfied, but we're going to have to pull our lines through. So knowing that I have one with a little bit of bounce, I'm going to go ahead and just loosely, not tightly. I'm going to do that. This is not going to bounce back too much, but if you think it will, sometimes they do, you might want to tie it off. I grab my thread and pull that through, and voila. I grab it, I pick up that second thread, and voila. And if you're really worried, you can go back and shake these guys loose. But as a wise woman once told me, it's okay. It'll work itself out in the end. But again, I'm giving tension on the front side of my heddle. Let's see, and I'm picking that up and coming through. So end effect, and I am going to be brazen. I'm forming my ups and my downs, if you can see that. Okay, so here's the part that also befuddles a few people. You're gonna have to tie on. So there's two ways that I've learned, and either one is fine. I'm gonna go ahead and take out just a small clump, and just being a little bit of a nerd there, I took an even number, 3 and 3, and I separate my up, or my slot, from my hole. You start from your center point. I take them, and I drop them around, and then I tie them on once. So I remember that when I did it, it's an over-under, but did you see how I did that? I could pull up and pull down. Leave it. Cotton linen may come undone. If you are struggling with your cotton linens or tencels or your silks, whatever, don't be afraid to get them a little bit wet. So then it doesn't matter now which way I go. I'm going to keep them small bundles just because the smaller the knot, the less issue you're going to have when you wind on. It's not going to create tension issues. So I'm just going that way. I'm going to separate my upper and my over. Here we go. And then we're going to go around. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I only have a handful here. So now the other way to do it is you could take them like this and separate them out, just mix and match them. But because I've been consistent throughout, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did before, which is take my slots and separate them from the holes and so on. This is where you're going to need your feet though. Notice that I'm putting some pressure on. Now you want to have an even balanced tension. We are using a mixed yarn. So we have cotton linen here, which is already a mixture of its own, and then I have superwash merino. But we want them all to be equally. So now here's the deal. If I went in a traditional knot, I'm going to go under and back through to create a square knot. That's going to lock it in. If you don't lock it in, it's going to come undone. You can do little bows, but they can come loose. I have learned this the hard way, especially with cotton, so you better be sure of what you're working with and make sure that you have it locked down. But see how I'm pulling up, then out, and then I'm going under, and that locks it in. Pulling up, then down, there we go. And that is my knot. And if I put my hands on there without doing any bad middle finger there, sorry, I can see that it is balanced across the board. And now all I have to do is weave in my header and then get weaving. And that's it. That's warping a loom.